over 200 times its own little tiny body height. If we as human beings had that same kind of potential to jump, we could jump over 900 feet. To give you some perspective of what 900 feet would be like, the Statue of Liberty from the base to the tip of her torch is about 305 feet. Zig Ziglar tells a story about training fleas. And he says, if you put a flea in a jar like this one, and we know that it has the potential to jump over 200 times its own height, a flea could easily jump out of this jar. But here's the interesting part. If the flea trainer takes the lid, puts the lid on the jar, the flea will jump, and of course it's banging its head up and down against the lid. And after a while, it becomes conditioned that it can only jump that high. The trainer can then take the lid off, and the flea will only jump as high as the lid was. So while the potential for it to jump out of the jar exists, it has become conditioned in its mind that it can't escape, and it gives up trying. I know that in my mind, I personally operate under certain beliefs about what I can or sometimes cannot accomplish in my career, my finances, my education, and relationships, etc. But what if those beliefs that I have about my potential were changed or even erased? The possibilities would be truly endless. Where do these beliefs originate? Well, our thoughts accumulate to become our beliefs. And our thoughts originate from our self-talk. We all do it. We all talk to ourselves. And at times that dialogue might sound like, I'm dumb, or I'm clumsy, or I've never been good at math, or English, or insert subject matter. Sometimes we even self-sabotage our could-be successes and let our self-talk hold us back from our true potential. Like the fleas who come to believe that they can't jump any higher than that lid was, we come to believe that we can't excel beyond a certain point. A couple of weeks ago, Travis talked about the importance of goal setting and writing our goals down. But I want to take it a step back, because if you don't believe in your true potential, if you don't believe in the possibilities that exist, writing down your goals probably won't be very effective. Too often we focus on what we don't want to happen. We dwell on it. If we fail a test or if we have a minor setback in our lives, we say, see, I knew I was dumb or incompetent or I was bad at math. And we become focused on that. We assimilate it into our mind, and then we have to behave that way about our new beliefs. We have to watch our self-talk, how we allow others to talk to us, and how we talk to the people whom we influence, like our children or in my case, my students. Once people decide that they know how we are, it's almost as if they can't let us forget it. I remember my mom, which is where I got the idea that I was clumsy, she said, and she would remind me as I would go out to play, now watch out, Melissa, you know how clumsy you are, don't go and get hurt. And so then when I would go out to play and I'd be riding my bike along and there was a rock in the path of my bike, I'd focus so hard on that rock that I'd steer right into it and flip over the handlebars. I have the scars to prove it. She wouldn't let me forget that I was clumsy. So I was focused on that rock in the road and didn't see the possibility that there was a way around it. I was too focused on that rock in the road or that obstacle. So how do you focus on what you do want to happen? You start by recognizing your many successes and focusing on them. Now this is a lot harder to do than it sounds. I know when we have little children, we teach them, we're taught as little children to be modest and not to brag about ourselves. I remember when Maria was a little girl and I would be walking with her hand in hand and someone would come up and say, oh, little girl, you're so pretty. And she would say, I know. And immediately I would reprimand her. I would reprimand her and say, don't, you have to be modest, you have to say thank you. So we're conditioned, this is a hard pattern to break. Or if someone gives us a compliment, it's the classic, oh, that old thing, if someone compliments, let's say, an outfit that we're wearing. So I started to talk about this with my classes and with my students, and I thought, you know, if I'm going to talk the talk, I better be able to walk the walk. So I put this new perspective into practice. And I'd say it was about a year and a half ago, I put on quite a bit of weight when I went to working in a full-time office job, a lot of sedentary work as it was, and I put on quite a bit of weight. And so I started Weight Watchers. And I did this religiously for a number of months and started to really become more active. And so at that time I was a member of an organization called Rainmakers. And I had been attending their monthly meetings. And one gentleman I hadn't seen in about 4 months throughout this process. And I got up that morning and I had a smaller size pants on and I knew I looked good. I knew I did. And when he saw me, he said, "Oh wow, Melissa, I know one of your goals was weight loss. You look really great." Now my inclination would be usually to shrug it off or say, "Oh, it was nothing," or "I still have a lot to go." But this day I thought, I'm going to revel in this success. And I said, very simply, "Thank you. Thank you for noticing I've been working really hard." And that took me so far outside of my comfort zone, it was hard to do that. Another reason it's so important to change your thoughts, your belief about your potential, and your self-talk is because we as human beings are self-regulating mechanisms. Meaning, much like your thermostat, it's a bit warm in here today, but much like your thermostat, if you set it on 72 degrees and it becomes too hot, the air kicks on, right? So it's supposed to work. If you set it at 72 degrees and it becomes too cold, then the heat kicks on to bring it back up to 72 degrees. Seems like these days it could be the day of the week, determining whether we have heat or air on. But we too are self-regulating mechanisms as human beings. So what that means is if we believe that our potential is up here and we find ourselves underachieving, then we'll self-regulate back up. Conversely, if we think our potential is here and we find ourselves acting outside of what we believe ourselves to be, we'll self-regulate down. For example, a student. Let's say a student knows their whole life that they're a C student. They've affirmed it. Their parents told them they were a C student. Their teachers have told them they were a C student. I see this happen in my career. They believe, here's their belief level, I'm a C student. If by chance they get an A, the next test they'll flunk to get themselves back to that C regulation. So again, we are self-regulating mechanisms as human beings. My students, just like the fleas, are held back not by their potential. Their potential exists within them, but they're conditioned that they can't jump any higher, like the fleas with the lid. So what's holding you back? Where have you self-regulated? There's another story about baby elephants, and in some countries, elephants are used as work animals. So of course we know the potential exists for an elephant who weighs, a couple of tons. They're strong, they're powerful. So when they start to train baby elephants to use them to work in the field, at first to train them they have to use a very heavy chain and a metal stake deep in the ground. But after a while that baby elephant figures out that they can only go in such a circumference, so they give up trying. At that point, once this elephant, and again, the potential exists for this elephant to move a truckload of weight, you can use a little piece of twine like this. Simply place it around the elephant's ankle, and it believes, because of that conditioning, that it can't escape. It's up to you to create your new truth. You can begin by making a list of 10 things that you've done well, 10 things that you're proud of, 10 things to revel in your own success. Then remember each and every one of them like they're happening right now today. The richer and more descriptive the memory, the better. One time early on in this group, I spoke about New Year's resolutions. And at that time, I used the formula I times V equals R. And that stands for imagination times vividness equals reality. So the more that you can imagine that potential or see yourself into that success, the more likely it is to become a reality. With what we've learned about how the mind works and goal setting, it's up to us to change our thoughts from the inside and just sit back and watch how they manifest on the outside. It's up to us to teach our kids how to affirm themselves, how to self-regulate at a new belief potential, how to revel in their successes and commit themselves to living life to their fullest potential. So the next time that you feel yourself slipping into that terribly destructive pattern of self-talk that can only work to hold you back, or telling someone else how they are, as my mom did, what they can and can't do, remember the story about the fleas and the baby elephants, and don't ever allow yourself to be held back by your own beliefs about your potential. Change your thoughts, watch your self-talk, raise your beliefs, and live to your fullest potential.
Let's Is that number 10?
Huh?
Is that number 10?
It is.
Congratulations.